We have breaking news. A hit out on Attorney General Pam Bondi has been thwarted. A Minnesota man has been arrested after allegedly offering $45,000 for the killing of Attorney General Pam Bondi. According to court documents, Tyler Avalos posted the thread on TikTok. He included a picture of Bondi with a red sniper scope dot on her forehead. The caption read, quote, "Wanted, Pam Bondi. Reward, $45,000. Dead or alive?" End quote. Now, the post, which was flagged by another TikTok user in Detroit, prompted a federal probe. On October 16th, federal agents arrested Avalos in an apartment building in St. Paul, Minnesota. And according to the court documents, Avalos has a prior history of stalking and domestic violence. Also today, Time magazine has caved. The publication has updated the cover photo of its November 10th issue featuring President Donald Trump. This after severe backlash from the president. The new cover photo is coming up, and then you can be the judge. Plus, extreme danger. Hurricane Melissa is churning in the Caribbean as a Category 5 storm. We're going to tell you where she's headed and when she's expected to make landfall. But first, President Trump is making his rounds in Asia. Today, the president arrived in Japan after attending the ASEAN summit in Malaysia. While in Japan, President Trump met with Emperor Naruhito. And tomorrow, President Trump is set to meet with Japan's newly elected Prime Minister, Sanae Takaichi. The meeting comes as United States Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent says United States and China officials have reached a framework agreement on trade.
We have a framework for President Trump, President Xi to decide on, and we discussed a wide range of things from tariffs, trade, fentanyl, substantial purchase of U.S. agricultural products.
And rare earths.
And rare earths.
After those comments by the Secretary of the United States, markets are seeing a boost. Moments ago, the Dow, NASDAQ, and S&P 500 all finished in the green, with the NASDAQ seeing the biggest gain, closing up 1.86%. Meanwhile, apparently this backfired. It only lasted 5 minutes. Now, independent candidate for New York City Mayor Andrew Cuomo has taken down his AI-generated political ad. That ad depicted voters of rival candidate Democrat Zohran Mamdani committing crimes. Here's part of that ad.
Zohran Mamdani's opponents want you to believe he's an inexperienced radical whose policies will make New York City more dangerous. But what do his actual supporters think?
Mamdani isn't crazy.
Decriminalizing misdemeanors, like shoplifting. Third-degree assault. Guilty!
But Mamdani says you're free to go.
Woo-hoo! Who cares if legalizing prostitution statistically leads to an increase for sex trafficking of women and young girls by 70%?
I didn't have a real job until I was 30, but sure, give me the keys to the city. What's the worst that can happen?
Cuomo's campaign spokesperson, Rich Azzopardi, telling the New York Times the ad was a, quote, draft proposal that was neither finished nor approved, end quote. The ad was pulled offline 5 minutes after posting. Meanwhile, polling from Victory Insight shows Democratic candidate Zohran Mamdani is a clear front-runner in the New York City mayoral race. The poll, conducted from October 22 to October 23rd, asked 500 very likely voters who they will be supporting in New York City's mayoral race. Mamdani gained 47% of the votes. Cuomo came in a far second with 29%, and Sliwa in last with 16%. The poll also asked voters how they would vote if either Cuomo or Sliwa dropped out of the race. Without Cuomo, Mamdani leads Sliwa 49% to 41%. And without Sliwa, Mamdani leads Cuomo 49% to 39%. Chairman of CPAC, Matt Schlapp, and former White House Chief of Staff in the first Trump administration, and former Republican Congressman from North Carolina, Mark Meadows, joins me. Mark, first to you. The polls that we're seeing now, does it mean a done deal, or can a lot happen between now and November 3rd, I think, Tuesday?
Yeah, I think it's a done deal, and here's the reason why. You're seeing Democrat after Democrat after Democrat come out and endorse the front runner, and they wouldn't do that if their polls would suggest that there was any possibility that Cuomo was going to win. And when you start to look at this, you know, it was only a few months ago when everybody was backing away. Only AOC and Bernie Sanders were willing to embrace this candidate. Now everybody's jumping on board. So I think it's done. It's a sad day for New York, in my opinion. You've got someone, as reported, they were chanting DSA, not USA, DSA, Democrat Socialists of America, at the most recent rally. And who would have thought you would have had a Marxist socialist going to be the mayor of New York City?
And he has said so many anti-Semitic things. It wasn't like just one dumb joke. I mean, he actually seems to have, he seems to be an anti-Semite, Matt. That's the problem. Plus, you've got the people who pay most of the taxes in New York, probably the top 3%, are the people who are able to leave New York for 183 days and go live in another state. So New York City's in trouble.
So I tend to agree with Mark. I think people were willing to give Cuomo a second look. He got kind of pushed into this independent run. He didn't seem to have much energy or any new ideas. And this, ad snafu is just endemic, I think, of a campaign that's a little bit listless. He wants to be there to catch all the voters that don't want to be with Mamdani, but he's all the energy. And look, New York my parents were born in New York. This is sad for me. My grandparents, lived there. I used to go there as a boy. New York has a great tradition, but they have basically given the middle finger to anybody who's productive. They said, get the hell out of here. If you're not from some kind of exotic ethnicity, get out of here. You're not going to have any economic opportunities. And, crime is running on the loose, and it's a shame. But, part of me says, if you vote for it, you deserve it. And they're going to get it. They're going to get communism right in their face, and they're going to see how it works out, and it's not going to work very well. The problem for people like Mark and I is they'll then ask us to bail them out, right? This is the way it works.
The ask is already being queued up, because it's not that their policies don't work. It's that their policies don't work.
So catastrophic for you.
And they want others to bail them out. But you hit a key point. It's his position on Israel. His position really against the state of Israel, not just the fact that he's pro-Palestine, but his remarks and his positions are extreme. And it doesn't just end there. It also goes, Greta, they want to get rid of capitalism. I mean, you think about what made our country great, the freedoms that we have, and they want to get rid of them. They want a government more like China than what we have in the United States.
The thing is that communism in China and socialism in particular looks so good, but the problem is it's never worked anyplace. It's ended up being catastrophic to the people. It looks so good. Everybody gets everything.
It's only failed 100% of the time.
That's right. That's right.
But it is good for one set of people, and it's people who get to run it. And this is always the problem. It fosters this idea that there's an elite that we need to make the decisions for us. And back to this question of Israel, it's Jew hatred. It's hatred towards Israel, but it's not just Israel as the Jewish state. It's Israel as a democratic state. Christians are being persecuted all over this world, including in the Middle East, and it's mostly at the hands of radicalized Muslims. And this is a big problem around the world. It's to the point where Christians and Jews are in this fight together. This idea that you should be able to be a minority religion, you should have the right to practice your religion or not practice a religion. These are all rights that should be accepted. And Israel is hated because they don't want to be a theocratic state run by Muslim extremists.
But I imagine a lot of people are watching this think, well, I don't live in New York, so what do I care? But then when you see Senator Bernie Sanders, Congresswoman AOC, who's now seen as sort of the face of the party among other people, Hakeem Jeffries is the minority leader, the minority leader in the Senate, Chuck Schumer, they've all endorsed him. So this really has become the Democratic Party. And if he sinks New York, that's going to be hung up around the neck of every Democrat.
Well, and every Democrat moderate Democrat needs to realize this, that the New York mayor will actually be on the stage for the Democratic convention. He will be celebrated. So it's no longer this extreme leftist that we can kind of put on this, sidetrack. He is on the main highway for the Democrat Party, and we saw that in the rally over the last 48 hours. But we're also seeing this extremism really start to take hold, that you don't win a primary unless you embrace this socialist kind of a thing. And it's scary for Democrats across the country who have been Democrats for generations. They're now saying the Democrat Party has left them. And guess who has acknowledged that and is reaching out to them? President Trump.
Is it possible that the city council has enough power so that he doesn't have any power? I don't know how New York works.
I agree with Mark. I don't know what this means in terms of setting tax rates and, how much you're going to play the police chief. This is bigger than just who's the mayor of New York City.
That's why it goes beyond just, I don't
because
live
it's
here.
always been one of the top 3 jobs in the country, right? So you become immediately a national figure. And look, it's good for the Republican Party because they're going to run against this guy. They're going to run against all of his radicalism. But more than that, it's not just the words that he says. It's the squalor in which he says it. It's the crime. It's the homelessness. It's the drugs. Our big cities, and this is only an American problem, by the way, our big cities in America that have embraced Marxism are hopelessly broken. Yes, they have some periods of time when they kind of get a little bit of momentum, but they have embraced this idea that rich people are bad, that wealth is a cancer.
But the problem is those rich people that finance anything in a city like New York are going to leave. They're going to
have to leave.
What's so easy. They can afford to leave. I mean, they got the money to leave.
The sad thing is that people don't have the money to leave. They're stuck in the broken schools. They're stuck with the DEI. They're stuck with the cesspool. And it's a sad thing because there's a lot of working class people in New York that want to live in a safe place. A lot of them are immigrants. They've come to America wanting this dream, and they're in this semi-nightmare.
Matt Schlapp, Mark Meadows, if you'll stick around. Coming up, really bad news for the Caribbean. Not just any hurricane. It's a Category 5 storm, and it could make landfall tonight. That when the record continues.
It's our America. We conquered it. We built it. Great values like honesty and fairness. Great courage. A great nation needs a free press. Newsmax is it. 30 million Americans regularly go to Newsmax when they really need to know. They watch Newsmax TV at home. On the free Newsmax app, they go to Newsmax.com. Start today. Newsmax is real news for real people.
A peace plan for Gaza. For the plan to advance, Hamas must disarm. Instead,
tonight, terrifying images emerging from Gaza. Videos show Hamas-linked gunmen carrying out a public execution as they return to the streets.
Hamas on a rampage, executing Palestinians, bloody crackdown, spreading terror. For freedom, not terror, Hamas must go.
There's nothing worse than losing your dog before their time.
That's why I created Dr. Marty Nature's Blend, designed to help dogs with everything from digestive issues to itching, even moving better.
Nature's Blend works because it's freeze-dried. So instead of destroying the nutrients with high heat, they all get right into your dog's body.
Take it from a veterinarian with over 50 years of experience saving dogs' lives. I have never seen a food make this much impact on a dog's health.
For a limited time, get up to 54% off Dr. Marty Nature's Blend, plus a free gift with our special TV offer. Call or go to drmartypets.com/TV.
Hello, everyone. It's President Donald J. Trump, and it's Trump time. Check out this red beauty. It's one of my new watches. Wear it proudly on your wrist, and everyone will know exactly what it's for, who it represents. It's really going to be something special. It's for your favorite president. Get your watch today at gettrumpwatches.com. These make a great gift. It's Trump time.
Category 5 hurricane is ripping through the Caribbean. Right now, it has in its crosshairs Jamaica, home to 2.8 million people who have no place to go because Jamaica is an island. Her name is Hurricane Melissa. She's on track to make landfall tonight or early tomorrow morning with winds topping 160 miles per hour. As it stands now, Hurricane Melissa is set to be the most powerful storm in Jamaica's history. Meteorologist Amy Metz has the latest. Amy?
Thank you, Greta. Yes, this is extremely dangerous. The situation going on now prompted air travel to completely stop yesterday at 8 p.m. You can see Jamaica behind me with its hurricane going right over the entire island. By tomorrow, on Tuesday, we're looking at a landfall. These impacts tonight are going to be extreme as well, as surge is going to be pushing up anywhere east of that landfall. A wall of water coming in with the strong winds up to 13 feet. That's going to be higher, very close near Alligator Pond and regions that are right next to that eye wall. Kingston would not be surprised to see 6-foot rise in the waters there, but on top of it, Kingston and other regions along the southeastern coast will be inundated with extreme amounts of rain. I'm talking up to 2 feet in that location. Now, after we get through this landfall, it's 220-mile-per-hour wind gusts that I'm expecting right before the landfall, of which the hurricane hunters actually just turned around. This morning, in a statement, NOAA has announced that the turbulence led them to leave the storm. Where they had registered 201-mile-per-hour wind gusts, we know that the other side of the storm typically has the stronger wind. Now, by Wednesday, as the storm is passing over the island, there will be a pull near Montego Bay from the north, pulling that water and surge into the northwestern areas across the island. Unfortunately, this is going to be extremely devastating. Local agencies there have opened up 800 shelters as people are preparing for the worst. Still, some people were out walking around, but these beaches are going to be evacuated. Just tropical storm force winds earlier able to collapse some of the trees. And now with the heavy rains, it's going to be landslides and more falling trees that could lead to additional issues. In Haiti, at least 3 have already been reported dead from the heavy rainfall associated with this storm. And as we go through the next couple of days, things are going to be extremely hazardous across Jamaica, leading to power outages that could affect the entire island. And in some cases, these rural areas don't get power back for months. Greta, please, we'll keep our thoughts and prayers with these people. A lot of nonprofits are out there now, and if anybody wants to coordinate any kind of supplies, you can look up meteorologist Amy Metz or some of those organizations that are helping out.
Amy, thank you. Jamaica's in for some very big trouble. Thank you, Amy. And here is something to watch. Tomorrow, air traffic controllers here in the United States are set to miss their first full paycheck. This, of course, is due to the already 27-day government shutdown. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy is sounding the alarm. He says these air traffic controllers are, quote, wearing thin. So if you are headed to the airport, be prepared for delays. By the way, many air traffic controllers have rent or mortgage payments to pay, families to support, and many live paycheck to paycheck. Congress, though, whose job it is to fund the government and air traffic controllers, they will get their paychecks. Coming up, Russia claims to have test-launched a nuclear-capable missile, but what is different about this one that is alarming NATO? That one, the record continues.
He loves the Constitution. He fights for what's right. He hates the bad guys. He's a freedom warrior. He's your freedom warrior. Watch Carl Higbie every weeknight on Newsmax.
I am Mr. H, owner of Immuno 150, possibly the most complete and best nutritional supplement in the world, bar none. Now, it has propelled me to 91 years of age and my wife Shirley to 82. Both of us are still cutting a wide swath in life, doing everything we did many years ago. All because of Immuno 150, and it can do the very same thing for you. Try it for 90 days so you can experience the difference it can make in your life. Nothing on the market can compete with the way we blend 70 plant-derived colloidal minerals with 80 very carefully selected nutrients. You'll be surprised if you take the recommended dose of Immuno 150 for 3 months. Place your order now so that you can be with us many years from now. Thank you and God bless.
Drop is finally here. Drop delivers the weight loss benefits of GLP-1 injections in easy-to-use oral drops, no needles.
That's right. The 2 big drawbacks with weight loss injections are high costs and weekly injections. Drop is flavorless and odorless, so you can just add it to water or your favorite beverage. Drop offers other advantages over injections too. With Drop, you can personalize your dosage based on your weight loss goals.
And because you add Drop to any liquid, there's no concern about injection site infections, bruising, or dosage confusion.
Drop is the easier, safer, cost-effective alternative to help you achieve your weight loss goals without the needles.
Can't find it anywhere? The Wellness Company has it. No consultation needed. Simply order online and use promo code SLIM to save $100. Visit dropthepounds.com/slim. That's promo code SLIM at dropthepounds.com/slim.
My employees and I want to thank all of you at Newsmax for your continued support of MyPillow. It's because of you and the grace of God that we're making it through. And to thank you, we're bringing you the best offers ever. Get our MyPillow bed sheets, only $29.88. Any color, any style, any size, even kings, regularly $119.98, now only $29.88. Our My Towels are finally back in stock. Get a 6-piece My Towel set, regular $69.98, now only $39.98. Towels that actually work. What a concept. And for the first time and the only time ever, you're going to get our limited edition premium My Pillows. They're made with Giza cotton and a designer gusset. Queen $17.98, Kings only $19.98. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code when you order today. Inventory for these offers are extremely limited, and once they're gone, they're gone.
Make this Christmas the year you go all in on joy. At Balsam Hill, celebrate with one of our beautifully crafted lifelike trees. For a limited time during our anniversary sale, save up to 50% off and start making memories at balsamhill.com.
It's called a flying Chernobyl. You know, that's not good. Yesterday, Russia claimed it has successfully test-launched a nuclear-powered missile, something the United States doesn't have. Here's file footage, you're seeing it, of a previous test. NATO's code name for this is Skyfall, and it looks like it's straight out of a James Bond movie. Russia's chief of general staff telling President Putin Russia calls the missile Berezovsky. That is a Russian word for a storm petrel, a type of seabird known for its resiliency in stormy weather. The Berezovsky missile covers 8,700 miles. Putin, wearing camouflage clothing, says the missile is immune to current and future missile defenses. Today, President Trump responded.
They know we have a nuclear submarine, the greatest in the world, right off their shores. So, I mean, it doesn't have to go 8,000 miles. And they're not playing games with us. We're not playing games with them either. We test missiles all the time, but, you know, we do have a submarine, a nuclear submarine. We don't need to go 8,000 miles. And I don't think it's an appropriate thing for Putin to be saying either, by the way. He ought to get the war ended. A war that should have taken 1 week is now in its soon 4th year. That's what he ought to do instead of testing missiles.
Meanwhile, on Friday, Norway's defense minister warning that Russia's nuclear arsenal is pointed at America. Retired U.S. Air Force Brigadier General and former U.S. Deputy Military Representative to NATO, Blaine Holt, joins me. Good evening, sir.
Evening.
This missile that Russia has, I guess the fact that we have a nuclear sub off the coast of Russia is good, but that's just a defensive thing. If this missile takes off by any chance, is fired by Putin, what happens?
Oh, well, it would be bad. I mean, we're back to the Cold War days now. Russia has been on a wartime footing since the Ukraine war started, but they mobilized and innovated with new weaponry. And so this nuclear-powered, not just nuclear weapon, nuclear-powered missile, it can go a lot farther probably than 8,700 miles, and it only flies at 160 feet above your head, so it's going to evade most systems. Not all systems, but what's troubling is the family of systems now, hypersonics, the Poseidon system, Sarmat, they're all right at the top end of the most deadliest forms of warfare in the world. And so we should take heed of this, and at the same time, we've got to get to some sort of strategic arms limitations talks soonest.
You mentioned the hypersonic missiles. What are those, 5X or 7 times? What is it, Mach what?
They can go right on up to Mach 15 in some cases. You're now, anything beyond 6 is going to be a hypersonic missile, and they just keep on piling on with new technology and the speed. We're struggling in this area. We're getting there, but we're not caught up because we blew these investments a long time ago. That doesn't matter. We are where we are. But what we have to respect and understand is that Russia, at its highest end, is building some rather formidable weapons. And it's going to require our effort and our thinking and our what we used to do in the Cold War days to pull this back.
Well, the nuclear-powered are frightening, and with a nuclear warhead, that's frightening. But these hypersonic, if they are fired at us at Mach 6, 7, 8, up to 15, we don't even know that they've been fired until they've hit us, right? You don't know that they've been fired till it's too late.
Right. So it's even worse than that. So now put them on one of their submarines because they have them within proximity to us. And now your warning time is down to minutes. You're down to, you don't have time to launch the nuclear football in 7 minutes, but that's what we're talking about.
See, I mean, this whole thing, I don't know what's going on with Putin, but, he's blown 2 chances now, once in Alaska in August, and now again, this recent one with President Trump. It's not like he wants any sort of agreement on anything. Now he's got nuclear weapons. Apparently, the defense minister says of Norway that they're pointed towards us. He's got missiles pointed towards us. Now he's showing off this new nuclear missile. And we know he's hypersonic. I mean, there is nothing pointing in a safe direction.
No, there's not. But this is also rhetorical leverage for a future negotiation. And Kirill Dmitriev, who just met with Ambassador Witkoff, he intoned as much.
I mean, but you hope that it's just that, and you're not dealing with a crazy person. We hope that this is just saber rattling. And that's what we've had since the Cold Wars. It's all been saber rattling. We said, we have this weapon. Well, we have this bigger one. Well, now we have this bigger one. That's what it's been in the Cold War. But at some point, you run the risk that you're going to run into someone who's really crazy.
What bothers me is if Putin is gone for any reason, it's very likely the one that would step into his shoes is someone who believes they can win a nuclear war. That's a big problem.
What about the foreign minister Lavrov? He's been there since 2004, and he's oftentimes at Putin's side, and he's always at every single foreign ministry meeting around the world. What do you know about him?
He's one of the toughest negotiators in the world. He's one of the most gifted diplomats in the world. He's obviously a Russia first guy, but he is a steady hand in the Kremlin. And whether you like him or whether you hate him or what he says, he does provide for us an avenue of approach to negotiate and work with.
Do you think that Putin's doing this now because President Zelensky of Ukraine was here and he wanted the Tomahawk missiles, which President Trump has not yet given him or sold him, and those missiles are so evasive, and if Zelensky does get those Tomahawk missiles, he can hit Moscow easily, undetected, and quite quickly. Do you think that that's in response to that dialogue that he's now sort of upping the ante and showing off his hardware?
Yeah, that's very logical because he feels Moscow is threatened if Tomahawk comes into the theater, and what he's trying to do is show some of their new hardware as a deterrent for the West, and that's exactly right.
Who's winning the war, Ukraine or Russia?
I wish I could tell you it was Ukraine, but on the front lines, that's not the case. And that's why the path out of this war is not a military one, it's an economic one. Pokrovsk and Kupiansk fell, and they're running out of soldiers. It's a desperate situation, but the valor that's being committed to by the Ukrainian army is nothing shy of stunning. It's amazing what they're able to do and their innovation with drones. It's just not enough of them, and there's not enough weapons. And Russia is now closing in on the Dnieper River now that these 2 logistics hubs are gone.
Brigadier General Blaine Holt, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Is the future of Gaza now? An official with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu telling the Times of Israel reconstruction can begin in areas held by Israel in Gaza. On Saturday, President Trump saying this about the ceasefire.
I think it'll hold, yeah. Oh, it's good. Well, if it doesn't hold, if it does hold, that would be Hamas. Hamas will be not hard to take care of. It will be very quickly. But they gave us their word on something, so I think it's going to. And if it doesn't, then they'll have a very, very big problem.
When will the stabilization force be in place, or when do you need
Pretty
it
soon,
in place?
pretty quickly.
Weeks,
So far, it's just, a period of time. I don't want to give you doing it right now.
There appears there might be a slight catch. Hamas still has not completed phase 1 of the deal. 13 bodies of killed hostages have not yet been returned. Middle East correspondent Zach Anders is in Tel Aviv, where it is 10:29 p.m. local time. Zach?
And Greta, the president added pressure on Hamas over the weekend, declaring on Truth Social that Hamas had 48 hours to release those remaining 13 bodies. Now, we've received an update. We'll get to that in a moment. That could bring that number down to 12. Again, we'll get to that in a moment. The president writing in part, Hamas is going to have to start returning the bodies of the deceased hostages, including to Americans, quickly, or the other countries involved in the Great Peace will take action. Some bodies are hard to reach, but others they can return now, and for some reason, they are not, end quote. Excavation efforts throughout the day were led by an Egyptian team and the Red Cross, with Hamas gunmen seen at these sites. Hamas men reportedly participating in today's search efforts as well. Israeli authorities claim Hamas knows where every body is buried and that they are stalling in this retrieval process. Reports in the Hebrew press today claim that the IDF says they know where 9 of the remaining 13 are located and that a search emphasis was placed on those locations today. Some remains are believed to have been buried intentionally in certain areas, while other remains may have been left inside tunnels that were sealed or bombing. It's unclear, and they now need to be excavated still in those tunnels. That's not been ruled out either. But here's the Prime Minister's spokesperson earlier today.
Hamas knows where our hostages are, and we know they are aware of their locations. The media has taken the bait and somehow garnered empathy for Hamas, a terror organization, reasoning with their excuses that they can't locate our remaining hostages. Let it be known to the media. Israel is aware that Hamas knows where our deceased hostages are in fact located. If Hamas made more of an effort, they would be able to retrieve the remains of our hostages.
Limited shipments of aid and fuel continue into Gaza through the Egyptian crossing that was largely closed throughout the entirety of this war. As for the plans for the day after, regional leaders continue to share concerns that they will be unable to send in their own security forces until Hamas disarms. We saw the King of Jordan say so today. Now, Israel has outlined who they do and don't want to participate in that day after plan as well. Today, Israel's foreign minister reminded the region that Israel still views Turkey as a hostile actor in the region and that Israel would reject Turkish involvement going forward. Take a listen.
With regard to Turkey, why we are against the participation of Turkey in Gaza. So I would say that countries that once are ready to send armed forces should be at least fair to Israel. They shouldn't be so supportive maybe, but they shouldn't be hostile to Israel.
As for Hamas and other terrorist elements storming back into power across areas of Gaza the IDF withdrew from, security source confirms to me today that there have been more than 200 instances of armed men crossing the so-called yellow line toward IDF forces over the last 2 weeks and approaching those forces, forcing them to either fire warning shots or engage with those targets. Now, we have received an update, the Red Cross telling us that they have picked up a casket of a body or what's believed to be one of these hostage bodies, and that as of 20 minutes ago, they were en route to the IDF forces for a handoff. We won't know likely until tomorrow morning, once those remains are forensically identified, who that was. If it does turn out to be one of the Israeli hostages, that could bring that number down to 12. But again, this is a process that is taking now 2 weeks after we saw the living 20 hostages come out of Gaza. And that was the window when we were supposed to see all of the hostages come out together. So this is taking quite a bit of time, getting the ire of Jerusalem and Washington. Greta?
Zach Anderson, Tel Aviv, thank you. And 2 separate crashes, both in the South China Sea. The Navy's Pacific Fleet says yesterday a fighter jet and Seahawk helicopter crashed within 30 minutes of each other. This was during a routine operation. The Navy says the 3 crew members aboard the helicopter were rescued safely. The 2 pilots on the fighter jet ejected, and they were also rescued safely. Today, President Trump was asked about the 2 crashes.
It could be bad fuel. I mean, it's possible it's bad fuel. Very unusual that that would happen.
I mean, you don't think there was like foul play or anything?
No, I don't think so. No, they think it might be bad fuel. We're going to find out. Nothing to hide.
Both aircrafts are based on the USS Nimitz, which is a 1,092-foot nuclear-powered super carrier. That ship is returning to Washington State after its Middle East deployment over the past summer. And coming up, this will shock President Trump. The Washington Post coming to his defense. Find out why when the record continues.
Hey, I'm Carl Higbee from Newsmax. Look, I'm unapologetically pro-American, and honestly, this is the one place that lets me call it how it is. I'm not holding back. I'll give it to you straight every single night.
Kevin Sorbo here, and I have an important message to share. The government needs more money.
your money. If you owe the IRS back taxes, they can garnish your wages and levy your bank accounts. They can even seize your retirement or take your home. Don't let the IRS target you. Call the professionals at Tax Network USA. Their tax lawyers and enrolled agents are experts in powerful programs that may even help you eliminate your tax debt.
Call for a free consultation or visit tnusa.com.
You'll find them in cities, towns, and suburbs all across America. Millions of people who have Medicare and Medicaid but may be missing benefits they could really use. Extra benefits they may be eligible to receive at no extra cost. And if you have Medicare and Medicaid, you may be able to get extra benefits too through a Humana Medicare Advantage dual-eligible special needs plan. These plans have a $0 monthly plan premium. Call now to see if you qualify. With a Humana Medicare Advantage dual-eligible special needs plan, you could have doctor, hospital, and prescription drug coverage, plus extra benefits in one convenient plan. Most plans include the Humana Healthy Options Allowance. Get over $1,000 a year. That's $85 a month to help pay for covered over-the-counter items like vitamins, pain relievers, first aid supplies, and more. Your allowance is conveniently loaded onto a prepaid card each month, and whatever you don't spend gets carried over to the next month. Ask us about all the items your allowance may cover. Plus, you could get other important benefits. All plans include dental coverage with $0 copays for covered preventive services, vision coverage, including eye exams, and a yearly allowance to use towards eyewear, and hearing benefits with routine hearing exams and coverage toward hearing aids. Plus, hundreds of prescriptions have a $0 copay, so you'll pay nothing for them all year long. And you'll have access to Humana's multiple large plan networks of doctors, hospitals, and pharmacies. Best of all, if you have Medicare and Medicaid, you may be eligible to enroll in a Humana Medicare Advantage dual-eligible special needs plan right now. So if you have Medicare and Medicaid, call now to see if there's a plan in your area that could give you extra benefits. But now is the time. The annual enrollment period ends December 7th. Humana, a more human way to healthcare.
Hey, did you find the manual?
Yes!
Summon Dale!
Who's Dale?
American Home Show now provides video chat with live repair experts for home fixes over the phone. Let's go fix that oven.
Okay, Dale.
Sign up today at ahs.com.
A peace plan for Gaza. For the plan to advance, Hamas must disarm. Instead,
Tonight, terrifying images emerging from Gaza. Videos show Hamas-linked gunmen carrying out a public execution as they return to the streets.
Hamas on a rampage, executing Palestinians, bloody crackdown, spreading terror. For freedom, not terror, Hamas must go.
As we approach the one-year mark since the 2024 presidential election, talk of 2028 is starting to heat up. All eyes are on the White House. And first up, former Vice President Kamala Harris was asked about a potential 2028 presidential run and about her former boss, former President Joe Biden. Here's that exchange.
You say in your book, I'm not done.
That is correct. I am not done. I have lived my entire career a life of service, and it's in my bones.
You write very powerfully about the differences that many women have made to your life, whether that was your meeting with Angela Merkel or the experience of growing up with your extraordinary mother or the stories of your baby nieces, Amara and Leela. When are they going to see a woman in charge in the White House?
In their lifetime, for sure.
Could it be you?
Possibly.
Have you made a decision yet?
No, I have not. So that is what I speak of in the book, and you rightly point out that I, in reflection, realize that, I ask, was it on my behalf grace or recklessness to not raise the point with him about whether it was right for him to run? But let's be clear, my question was never about his capacity to be president.
And it was not just Harris who was asked about a potential 2028 presidential run. Her fellow Californian and California's Governor Gavin Newsom was also asked with the same question.
When I saw you slinging shots behind the coffee bar, I thought this guy might run for president.
I have no idea. The idea that a guy who got 960 on his SAT that still struggles to read scripts, that was always in the back of the classroom, The idea that you even throw that out is in and of itself extraordinary. Who the hell knows? I'm looking forward to who presents themselves in 2028 and who meets that moment. And that's the question for the American people.
Is it fair to say after the 2026 midterms, you're going to give it serious thought?
Yeah, I'd be lying otherwise.
Also over the weekend, former President Joe Biden made a rare appearance. The former president received the Lifetime Achievement Award at the Edward M. Kennedy Institute in Boston. Here's what the former president said.
Ongoing debates about the power and the exercise of power. Debates about whether we lead by the example of our power or the power of our example. Whether we show the courage to stand up to the abuse of power, or we're going to yield to it. We face these existential questions again today. I can't sugarcoat any of this. These are dark days. But we're one of the only countries in the world that time and again has come out of every crisis we faced stronger than we went into that crisis.
Chairman of CPAC, Matt Schlapp, joins me, as well as former White House Chief of Staff in the first Trump administration, former Republican Congressman from North Carolina, Mark Meadows. They're both back. There's talk about who's going to be on the Democratic ticket. Well, President Trump has recently been quoted that he said, of course, he's always turned out that maybe around 2028. I don't believe so. I don't believe the Constitution permits it. But he said Vice President Vance and Secretary of State Rubio would be a good ticket in 2028. So now the conundrum, who gets top billing?
Well, I think they're going to have to work that out. But here's the interesting thing, is to have two candidates of that quality, Greta. I mean, who would have thought? You have Vice President J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio, which he's getting rave reviews all across.
That's the problem. That's why I asked the question.
Yeah. So, interesting. These things have a way of working themselves out. I'm glad it's not Newsom and Kamala Harris.
Well, I spoke as a Republican. All right, Matt, same question.
I think this is dicey. Look, I think President Trump is in great shape. He looks great. And I think it's always awkward for a very powerful president to kind of cede power, walk away. Ronald Reagan did it. Ronald Reagan was a little bit sick when that happened.
But who takes the top billing on a Rubio?
And Ronald Reagan decided.
The question was
she's
the
pressing
top
us.
billing.
She's pressing
Rubio
Well,
and
Rubio
Vance.
keeps saying Vance because every time they ask Rubio, he says, "I think JD would be a great candidate." But remember the 11th commandment: Ronald Reagan wouldn't get involved in that primary. And so far, Trump has decided to follow the Reagan rule and to not get involved in the primary. If there's a big, vigorous primary, I predict there will be. It's going to be very interesting to see, can Trump stay out of that, or will he endorse his vice president or his secretary of state or someone else? I mean, it's going to be a very interesting thing. I would not want to be a Republican president with a former President Donald Trump vigorous commenting on the sideline. That might be interesting.
I'll tell you the bigger problem, I think, for the next president. Boy, I'm really reaching ahead of us, especially if it's a Democrat. I mean, who knows what could happen. Is that on this just on the Air Force One, Trump went back to the media section, did 34-minute gaggle. Okay, whoever the next president is, you're going to have to be as transparent as President Trump is, and I don't know that anyone else can do that, because we're going to be screaming at you, whoever you are.
Yeah, listen, he is not only skilled at that, but he enjoys that. It's not just going back. I've been with him on Air Force One, where he's gone back to the pool that's traveling with him and spent 30, 40 minutes. But it's also what we call chopper talk. It's on the way out to get on Marine One, where he's always.
He has set the standard for the next president, and the media is going to demand it.
But most of the others get a pass. Joe Biden got a pass.
Not anymore. I don't think anymore.
I hope you're right, because it's that transparency, that level of transparency that this president continues to answer the difficult questions. In fact, there were days when we said, Mr. President, this is a tough day. Yep, I'm going to go right for it. And was very clear and transparent. So I do think he set a standard. Hopefully it's something that Democrats will be called to.
I don't know who's going to be the Democratic nominee, but boy, I tell you, having two Californians vying for it, Matt, I think they ought to look for somebody in the Midwest.
It's the ATM, right, for really both parties, but definitely the Democratic Party. And I want to quibble with Kamala Harris because she gets everything wrong, that we already have had a woman be the president of the United States, and that was Jill Biden. We all know it, and she knows it too, which was it's the second time in our history where because a president was incapacitated that his wife stepped up. Woodrow Wilson's wife famously did it before Joe Biden. And look, I think
she
that
meant technically.
Yeah, but
I don't think she meant in the shadows.
But I think the Democratic Party owns this deception. I think it's a big problem for them. No one's ever kind of apologized or come clean, including Kamala Harris. She was in on this. And I think there's an odiousness to how the president's operated, or Joe Biden. They weren't honest. They weren't even honest about a very serious case of prostate cancer, just nothing. You talk about no transparency.
She says she's not done, and that she had a short race. But I actually sort of, looking back at it, I thought that inured to her benefit. She had a ton of money, and the more you heard from her and the more she talked, the less it seemed like people I thought the short race was actually something she was lucky about.
Well, you can see it in the polling. It started out very good in her favor and got progressively worse as we started getting towards November. But the other is you got to have a platform to run from. She is now a former vice president. That's the only platform she has. The governor, Newsom, is a governor. You've got other people that will have other platforms. I don't see her being
We got a former president
serious.
winning again.
Yeah, that's right. And the thing is he stayed the head of the party. And who's the head of the party? We've already had this conversation.
Who is the head of the party?
Well, it could be this mayor of New York City, this radicalized mayor, AOC.
Yeah.
Bernie Sanders. I mean, they really haven't changed much. They are a radicalized Marxist party. And so if you're going to win this nomination, you really got to be seen as the head of that party. Donald Trump was always the head of our movement. And our movement was bigger than just the party. And it's got to be the same for them, too.
Matt Schlapp, Mark Meadows, thank you again. And the Washington Post coming to President Donald Trump's defense. Why? Well, it's about the demolition of the White House East Wing. That area will soon be turned into the White House's new ballroom. Yesterday, the Washington Post editorial board's lead editorial reads in part, quote, in classic Trump fashion, the president is pursuing a reasonable idea in the most jarring manner possible. Privately, many alumni of the Biden and Obama White Houses acknowledge the long overdue need for an event space like what Trump is creating. It's absurd that tents need to be erected on the South Lawn for state dinners, and VIPs are forced to use porta potties. The White House State Dining Room seats only 140. The East Room seats about 200. Trump says the ballroom at the center of his 90,000 square foot addition will accommodate 999 guests. The next Democratic president will be happy to have this, end quote. Coming up, Time Magazine caves to President Donald Trump. That when the record continues.
Hello, everyone. It's President Donald J. Trump, and it's Trump time. Check out this red beauty. It's one of my new watches. Wear it proudly on your wrist, and everyone will know exactly what it's for, who it represents. It's really going to be something special. It's for your favorite president. Get your watch today at gettrumpwatches.com. These make a great gift. It's Trump time.
Joining us is Dr. Drew from the Wellness Company with advice for dealing with seasonal colds and flu. Doctor?
Cold and flu season is here, and every year you or a loved one gets sick. Your doctor can't see you. Waiting in a crowded urgent care is brutal. This is a particularly bad cold and flu season, and it's why doctors suggest every family needs an emergency medical kit. Your medical emergency kit is filled with essential prescriptions. It includes antibiotics like generic Z-Pak to get well faster, amoxicillin for pneumonia, strep throat, ear infections, plus prescriptions for nausea and UTIs, and even ivermectin. It's easy. Just match your symptoms to the prescription in your guidebook or call the telemedicine doctor standing by. Take your medication early and feel better faster. Having a medical emergency kit is like having an urgent care in your home. No waiting to see a doctor, no lines at the pharmacy.
Smart advice. We've shared the website and discount code below to save viewers $45. Order now and your kit will be rushed to your door. Thank you, doctor.
Derriere, Caboose, Booty,
Badunkadunk. No matter what you call it, if you have hemorrhoids, your tushy is no laughing matter. So don't use a cream that treats your rear end like a joke. Get serious relief with Recticare Advanced Hemorrhoidal Cream. Recticare Advanced is seriously effective with 2 powerful medicines for rapid dual-action relief, soothing the uncomfortable swelling, itching, and pain of your hemorrhoids. For serious hemorrhoid relief for your buns, get Recticare Advanced.
You okay in there? Consumer Cellular knows there are a lot of offers flying around, but they slip away too fast. We don't play games. What you see is what you get. No hot air, just plans starting at $20. Bet you're glad you wore cargo pants. Because cargo pants have all those pockets. You can see how we can cut your bill. Plans start at just $20. Call Consumer Cellular.
This is the story of the one who knows half-baked preparation leads to downtime that could bring the whole workday to a standstill. That's why she relies on Grainger. With professional-grade products and next-day delivery, Grainger helps ensure her team, and a whole lot of donuts, make every day a little sweeter. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Time magazine caves to President Donald Trump. Yes, you heard me right. Earlier this month, on October 14th, Time magazine released the cover photo you see on your screen of President Trump. This was a preview of the new cover that was expected to be released on November 10th. But shortly after the preview was released, President Trump took to Truth Social to say, quote, Time magazine wrote a relatively good story about me, but the picture may be the worst of all time. They disappeared my hair and then had something floating on top of my head that looked like a floating crown, but an extremely small one. Really weird. I never liked taking pictures from underneath angles, but this is a super bad picture and deserves to be called out. What are they doing and why? End quote. Well, fast forward to now, Time magazine has, well, changed its mind. Time has released this new cover photo of President Trump. What you see on your screen will now be the cover that's released on their November 10th issue. And now for a little trivia. Trump has been on more than 40 covers of Time magazine, making him second behind Richard Nixon, who had 55 Time magazine covers, with about 15 to 20 related to Watergate directly or indirectly. Meanwhile, 2 suspects whose names have not yet been made public have been arrested in connection to the Louvre crown jewel heist in Paris. According to the Associated Press, a police official who was not authorized to speak publicly about the ongoing case said that 2 men are in their 30s. He also said both men are known to the police. The unidentified official added the 2 suspects were identified through DNA traces. The 2 suspects taken into custody yesterday can only be held in police custody for up to 96 hours. Now, this comes after the historic jewel heist at the Paris Museum on October 19. 4 masked individuals disguised as construction workers broke into the world-renowned Gallery d'Apollon exhibit. The thieves stole 8 pieces of French crown jewels valued at $102 million. The thieves spent 4 minutes inside the museum after entering through a second-floor window. And then there's this. Get ready for this. A German machinery company called Bacher recognized their truck lift, Bacher Agilo, that the thieves used to get out of the museum into their scooters for a swift getaway. Bacher's turned that into an advertising opportunity. The company took to Instagram, posted this photo with this caption, "If you're in a hurry, the Bacher Agilo carries your treasures up to 400 kilograms at 42 meters per minute, quiet as a whisper, thanks to its 230-volt electric motor," end quote. And coming up, President Trump shows off his dance moves in Malaysia, the must-see video when the record continues.
You hear the same voices. Donald Trump knows that's a lie. From the same people. Donald Trump is less lucid. Saying the same thing. Insults, invective, and outright lies. And you say, enough! I'm Chris Salcedo, and I'll tell you the real news. You don't believe me? Just tune in.
Hi, my name is Damian Clark. And if you have both Medicare and Medicaid, I have some really encouraging news that you'll definitely want to hear. Depending on the plans available in your area, you may be eligible to get extra benefits with the Humana Medicare Advantage Dual Eligible Special Needs Plan. These plans have a $0 monthly plan premium. Most plans include the Humana Healthy Options Allowance. Get over $1,000 a year. That's $85 a month to help pay for covered over-the-counter items, like vitamins, pain relievers, first aid supplies, and more. The Healthy Options Allowance is loaded onto a prepaid card each month, and whatever you don't spend carries over from each month. Call today to learn about all the items covered. You could have $0 copays on hundreds of prescriptions all year long, including select brand name drugs. All plans have $0 copays for covered preventive dental services, which include 2 free cleanings a year, as well as coverage towards fillings. They also have vision coverage, including vision exams and a yearly allowance towards eyewear, such as lenses or contacts. And hearing coverage, which includes routine hearing exams and coverage towards hearing aids. Plus, your doctor, hospital, and pharmacy may already be part of our large Humana networks. So call the number on your screen now to speak with a licensed Humana sales agent. Wouldn't you love benefits like a monthly allowance? To help pay for covered over-the-counter items. So if you have Medicare and Medicaid, call the number on your screen now and speak with a licensed Humana sales agent. If you're eligible, they can even help enroll you over the phone in a Humana Medicare Advantage dual eligible special needs plan. And remember, annual enrollment ends on December 7th. So call now. Humana, a more human way to healthcare.
There's nothing worse than losing your dog before their time. So why do so many dog foods contain awful things a human would never eat? To save his pets, world-famous veterinarian Dr. Marty knew he had to change what was in their bowl.
That's why I created Dr. Marty Nature's Blend, my breakthrough formula that's changed everything about dog food.
Nature's Blend contains nothing but all-natural ingredients, designed to help dogs with everything from digestive issues to itching and paw licking, even moving around better. And that's because Nature's Blend is freeze-dried. So instead of destroying the nutrients with high heat, we gently preserve them, and you'll see the difference in your dog.
Take it from a veterinarian with over 50 years of experience saving dogs' lives. I have never seen a food make this much impact on a dog's health.
Such a huge difference in her health. More energy, more playful, no more pooping issues.
He's healthier, he looks better. Dr. Marty has thousands of 5-star reviews. And for a limited time, get up to 54% off Dr. Marty Nature's Blend, plus a free gift with our special TV offer. Call or go to drmartypets.com/TV. That's drmartypets.com/TV.
A peace plan for Gaza. For the plan to advance, Hamas must disarm. Instead,
Tonight, terrifying images emerging from Gaza. Videos show Hamas-linked gunmen carrying out a public execution as they return to the streets.
Hamas on a rampage, executing Palestinians, bloody crackdown, spreading terror. For freedom, not terror, Hamas must go.
What a dancer! Who? Our president. Over the weekend, President Trump arrived in Malaysia to a lively performance. They did not play his usual dance song, but that didn't stop President Trump from showing off his dance moves. President Trump could not resist joining in with those dancing performers. And the Chris Salcedo shows up next. Stay with Newsmax. See you tomorrow.